Okay. So if you look at your Facebook, we should be live. Yes, we are live. We are live. So I'm just going to take care of one or two little minor items here.
1
We are ready
second.
to go.
We
Professor
are.
Danny Chamovitz.
Thank you. I don't. I'm not on Facebook. That's why I don't see it. I'm on Twitter. Of course, we're not live yet.
Facebook and Twitter, ce n'est pas la même chose. Not yet, anyway.
I don't see it live on your Facebook page.
You don't see it live on my Facebook page? You might have to wait 5 seconds or refresh.
Now I see it. There you go.
You see
Wow, I see my. Oh no, that's too weird because I see myself in delay.
That's of course you do. So anyway, so Danny, can I call you Danny?
Of course you can.
Okay, you're such a kind person. Our interview show.
Can I call you Mel?
Yes, of course. It starts with the jingle. So, you know, I spent thousands of dollars, a dozen years recording this jingle.
Yeah,
so
let's hear the jingle.
You have to bear with me for a moment here. It's part of the program, you know. You ready?
Get a chair, grab a seat, or we'll sweep you off your feet. We move, we groove, you got Mel. Ease your legs, rest a while, all you gotta do is smile. We're swell, can't you tell, you got Mel. When the show begins, you better hold on real tight, or before you know it, you'll be high as a kite. Take a break, settle down, we're the only show in town. SRO, don't you know, you got Mel. Give it up, don't think twice, we're a hurricane on ice. What the hell, give a yell, ring your bell, show and tell. Mademoiselle, give a smell, you got Mel. You've got Mel.
And Mel has the incredible president of Gurion University, Professor Danny Chamovitz. And Danny, it's so great to see you. You've been through quite a I don't know what to call it, quite a harrowing experience.
Well, an experience shared by 10 million people worldwide. So not a unique experience, but yeah, I'm back from the netherworld of COVID.
And welcome back. You had us worried.
Thanks. Yeah. Had me a little worried too, but it's nice to be. It's one. I never so appreciated being able to breathe. Or never so enjoyed even just like going to a meeting of the Senate at Ben Gurion. You know, these things are great.
So welcome back. One day, you know, I know you as a very accomplished scientist. I will even tell you how accomplished you are. 5,865.
66.
Citations. Okay, but who's counting?
Right.
And you have dozens of papers cited over 100 times, which is a lot for a scientist. You've actually discovered a biochemical pathway, and you've written a very popular book, and you left all this to become an administrator.
No. First of all, I haven't left all this. I will always be a scientist. And I don't think being president of a university is being an administrator.
Okay.
Because by being president, what I'm doing is promoting science and research and excellence and making sure that you know, we've seen in COVID more than anywhere else that it's been academia. It's been the researchers from universities who've been leading the way. You know, oftentimes in higher education, we sort of have a target on our chests. You know, why do we need this, all this? But if you look what happened in Israel and throughout the world over the past 7 months, but especially in Israel, all of the major findings, all of the major innovations that then came from research labs and universities, it didn't come from industry. Industry didn't have the flexibility or the ability to take those chances. So what I'm doing as president is not being an administrator. Maybe my Mankal, my chief operations officer, he's an administrator. I'm leading an academic research endeavor that the future of Israel and the future of the world is dependent on.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because I was provoking you a little bit. I was hoping you'd say that. And you are, so I see you as a
And I
leader.
and I just published an article last week, so I still do science.
There you go.
There you go.
And you are leading a one of the most important universities in Israel.
The most important.
Yeah, I'm provoking you again. The most important university in Israel, where people like me are dying to get into to help you in your.
No, but wait, but Mel, we really are the most important.
Okay.
Because no, and you're just accepting that, because you want a job. No, just.
Well, I already provoked you once, and
if you
keep hiring me,
if you accept Ben Gurion's prediction or his prophecy that the future of Israel will emerge from the Negev, or that the future of Israel is dependent on a vibrant Negev. And we now know within Israel that, the only place left really for the young generation to grow and build apartments that they can afford is in the south. Hadera Gadera is completely full. And the future of the Negev is dependent on there being a vibrant metropolis centered in Beersheba. And the success of Beersheba to pull new populations and to pull new industries is dependent on Ben Gurion University. And so, therefore, the future of Israel is dependent on Ben Gurion University.
Okay. Yeah, I'm provoking you again because I started out my life in Israel, in the Negev, in Kibbutz Urim, when Beersheba was a tiny little shtetl 50 years ago.
Had a great camel market.
Yes, and I'm a great believer in Beersheba. Let's go back now to Pittsburgh. So people don't know how Danny made the Pittsburgh to Israel move.
Well, first of all, I'm not from Pittsburgh.
It says you are.
No, I'm from Aliquippa. Aliquippa is actually one of the reasons that Donald Trump may be reelected as president. Aliquippa is a small mill town northwest of Pittsburgh, closer to West Virginia than it is to Pittsburgh.
What were you doing in a mill town, Danny?
I was born there. So the question is, what was my father was born there also. It's a small mill town on the Ohio River that in the beginning of the 20th century, the Jones and Laughlin Steel Corporation decided to build the most modern, the largest steel mill in the entire world on the banks of the Ohio River. They imported workers from Eastern and Southern Europe to work in the mills. African Americans came from the South to work in the mill. The Greeks came to sell them food, and the Jews came to sell them clothes. Literally, my grandfather started as a peddler and then opened up a shoe store for the mill workers. And then in 1982, the mill closed. So when I was a kid, there was almost 20,000 people there, and now there's about 7,000, 8,000 people.
So you grew up in a shtetl?
I grew up in a shtetl. Only about 25% of my high school went to college. The idea was you graduated high school and you went to work in the mill. When I got accepted to Columbia University, I got accepted on geographic distribution. But then when I found that my SATs were in the lowest 10% of Columbia, I'm talking Yerucham.
And I thought you
were the only Jew in my whole school district by the time
I thought that you were a child prodigy.
There you go. I was I'm from a development town.
So what were you like as a kid?
That you'd have to ask the people who were around me, but it was a schizophrenic life because on the one hand, I had my life in Aliquippa where it's still such an important part of my identity. Like I said, I was the only Jew in my whole school. And, to fit into that environment and to play football on the weekends, Aliquippa has the highest proportion of American football players in the Hall of Fame of any place in the United States, because that was the only way out. A very tough town, but at the same time, I had a very strong Jewish identity, so I would spend my weekends in Pittsburgh with young Judea.
Oh,
so it was this schizophrenic life of, 5 days a week, going to, like homecoming and and those type. I was in the marching band and all those things. And then on the weekend, talking Zionist ideology with my Jewish friends. And before Facebook and the internet, these two groups of people never ever met. So I was really a chameleon who could fit in at two different places at the same time.
Incredible. And you were in the marching band, so either you were a great marcher or you played an instrument.
I played the saxophone in the marching band.
I didn't know that either.
I have a saxophone right over there in the corner.
You want to play it for us?
No. We're not going to. It's there to remind me that I used to be able to play.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge you now, so that 6 months from now we'll do a saxophone duet together.
And we'll see if I get my breath back from the COVID. That's actually a good way of knowing if I can breathe properly. That would be great. Actually, that would be great physical therapy for my breathing.
There you go. So I didn't know you played saxophone. I mean, there's so many things I don't know about you. So then you went to school at Columbia, which is a really good university.
Right.
And
well, actually, in the middle, I took a year off and I went to Israel for a year on what's called the Shnat Shirut, or probably like the way you got to Israel, maybe at one point. I
was in Habonim. I was in
Young Judea. So I went to Kibbutz Keturah.
And I went to Kibbutz Urim.
Right.
And then I went to school in the army. But this show is about you.
Right. So I took a year off, part of the time in Jerusalem, part of the time at Kibbutz Keturah. At that point, I decided, up until then, I was going to be pre-med. My father's a physician. My three uncles are physicians. Two cousins are physicians. My sister's a physician. It's a genetic trait. But when I was at Keturah, I was driving a tractor, and which is really boring. You've driven a tractor, I'm sure, when you were there. But it gives you lots of time.
I've driven tractors into things too.
So I'm going through the alfalfa fields, and I noticed when you cut alfalfa, it grows back. But when you cut wheat, it doesn't. And I knew nothing about plants, but what do we do in science? You look for the eureka moment. The eureka moment is when you have that idea, and all of a sudden it hit me. If we could figure out why wheat grows back and alfalfa doesn't, we could feed the world, which would be at least as important as another physician in the family.
Is this
and
true?
It was completely true story.
Okay.
And it was from
because I owe my audiences the truth,
Oh, sure. And it was that day I stopped becoming pre-med and became pre-ag. I was going to study agriculture and then go work on the kibbutz. And when I went back to Columbia, I was shocked to find out that they don't even teach botany. But the dean then, his name was Dean Pollock. I went to talk to him. He said, listen, we don't even have botany. You're going to have to leave if that's what you want. He said, but I would suggest that you do your first degree not in agriculture, but in plant genetics, because there's a new field called plant molecular biology. This was 1981 or 1982. And that's where the future is. And so I transferred to Hebrew University for my junior year and finished my degree in genetics at Hebrew University.
Wow. How come your Hebrew was good enough?
It's not. But, first of all, I'm a big believer in the Peter principle of languages, that you'll learn the amount of Hebrew you need in order to survive. What that means is that all of the reading was still in English then. And I've never written anything longer than a paragraph in Hebrew in my life, because, in science, we don't do that. And at that point in science, there was no Hebrew internet. So all Israelis of our generation are more comfortable writing in English than in Hebrew for email. So I could learn. I still remember sitting my first lecture, which was in statistics. And fabulous Professor Uzi Motro is going around talking about stiat teken. And I'm using my dictionary, trying to figure out what he's talking about. And for those who don't know Hebrew, a stiat teken is a standard deviation. But stia means deviant, like a sexual deviant. And I couldn't figure out why he's talking about sexual deviance throughout statistics class. I completely lost. But, so I could talk about standard deviations in Hebrew, but, and I can read sports in Hebrew because the English newspapers don't cover Israeli sports. But anything else,
You like
What?
Israeli sports?
Oh, basketball. I had to find something to identify with, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing you didn't like.
I was one of the first people to have a season ticket for the Jerusalem Apoel basketball team when they made it to Europe in around 1989 or 1990 with Papi and Adi Gordu. And people like my friend said, "What, you have a subscription to basketball?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "But we don't do that." I said, "Yeah, we do that."
And you decided to stay in Israel.
Oh yeah, sure.
So
Obviously, it didn't happen by accident.
No, but I mean, there's some moment where you said, "Here, this is where I have to be."
Oh no, I growing up in young Judea and growing up with this schizophrenic life, and it really was a schizophrenic life. I mean, I really did succeed in both lives, okay, but I realized that wasn't a life. I was looking for a way of merging the two together, and Israel was the way for me to merge the two identities into one. Now, I wouldn't have stayed past 2 years if I wasn't enjoying myself, if I didn't like my lifestyle. You know, ideology will only get you so far.
Exactly. So anyway, so let's zoom ahead here. I like that, to zoom ahead on Zoom. But you went back to the States for your postdoc.
Yeah, but I went to the States as an Israeli postdoc.
Okay.
I had never, by that time I was married, my wife's Israeli. I had never been an independent person in America. I left home when I was 18.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I didn't even know how to shop in an American supermarket, because at that point in Israel, we didn't have supermarkets, So I was an Israeli postdoc.
We had, but not in your neighborhood. So then you came back after the postdoc.
Right.
And you got a tenure track position.
At Tel Aviv University, right.
Tel Aviv University, where we got to know each other. And then in 2012, you became like a award-winning international writer.
That sort of happened by mistake. It happened for it didn't. What led me to that were two things. One, in science, in biology, plant biologists are sort of like we're the Jews of biology. We're always convinced that people are against us, whether they are or not. Everyone, it's only botany, it's only plant biology. We don't need to do that. And I would be like teaching introduction to plant biology, and all the attention was going to neurobiology and biotechnology, and these molecular microbiology, your field. These are sexy terms, whereas plant biology, that's for people who want to run around fields and cut off leaves.
And you were in the botany department.
Exactly. I was in the Department of Botany. With my
friends.
And I was teaching, I don't tell you how to choose your friends, but I was teaching intro botany every year, and the students were like convinced that plants like classical music, but they were shocked to find out that plants could differentiate between red light and blue light. And plants don't like classical music, but they can differentiate red light. And then I realized the problem wasn't the students. The problem was we plant biologists had done a really bad job in showing how cool plant biology really is. So that's stage number one. Stage number two was that there was a book. Why did they think that plants like classical music? Because there's a book from the 1972, I think, called The Secret Life of Plants, which even Stevie Wonder wrote an album in honor of it that talked about plants liking classical music. Now it's a book full of pseudoscience, which wasn't meant to be taken seriously, but it became an international bestseller even to this day.
I remember it. And if you ask Eugene Rosenberg how he remembers me at the beginning, I did an experiment playing Beatles music to Euglena based on that book.
You never published it though, right?
No, it's highly unpublished.
Exactly.
Will never be published.
So the people need to know Eugene Rosenberg is not your father.
Yeah. I call him my uncle.
Right. So then I asked the question, well, why hasn't anyone written the other book? Then because the science is so great, we don't need to do pseudoscience. And I was supposed to have a sabbatical, but because it was exactly the time in life when the kids, you can't leave the country, you know. And so I said, no, maybe I could take a little bit, maybe I should try to write the book. I've always loved writing. And I was curious on whether I could write a popular science. I knew I could write, you know, science. Could I write a popular science book that people would actually read? And the result was the book, What a Plant Knows. And the surprising thing is it's still in print, still selling about 80 copies a week, almost 10 years since it was published. Yeah, it's quite bizarre.
It's what we call,
it's caught everyone off guard. It caught my publisher off guard.
it didn't catch me off guard. It's a perennial. It's a perennial.
Yes, it's a perennial book.
It's like alfalfa, not like the wheat.
Alfalfa is not a perennial, no.
Ah,
Oh, actually it is, up to a while. You're right, sorry.
okay. Listen, this show is about you, but you don't know that I have a master's degree in botany. So someday we'll have a lot to talk about over a whiskey about
Who was that? Who was your master's?
Ilan Friedberg.
In botany? Okay, that's interesting.
Yuda Ben Shaul was the, anyway, I'm older than you are, and
Right.
you know, that's why I have less hair. So while you were actually elucidating new biochemical pathways for carotenoid production, which we're not going to go into because I don't have that many scientists on my show, but you did discover novel pathways that have importance to plants and to animals, and you became a science writer, a successful science writer. And this brings me to the next question that I want to ask you. People like us are storytellers. So how much of your success as Danny, as a scientist, as a professor, and now president of Ben Gurion University, do you ascribe to your ability to reach out to people?
Mel, I think the thing is, before we were storytellers, we were writers. And I have to go back to Aliquippa and Columbia University. So when I got to Columbia, Columbia is a very classic university. There's required classes of everyone. And one of the required classes is intro to freshman composition, where for, you know, every week you have to write 750 words for a whole semester.
Even science majors?
Everyone has to. Now, the thing is, there's a placement exam. And if you're really good, you get placed in creative writing. And I took the placement exam and I failed it. And I got placed in a course that's called Introduction to Freshman Composition, which is a semester course before freshman composition, which is basically for the people who play football and wrestle.
Okay.
Just to put it in perspective, Columbia University was at that time 60% Jewish. Out of a class of 18, I was the only Jewish kid in the class. And I went to the teacher and I told her, the instructor, I said, listen, there's a mistake. I don't belong here. And I said, look, I was in Israel for a year. I was just not in a good mood. She said, well, let's see what you do on your first composition. And on the first essay, I got a C-. And she said, maybe, and the reason it was because of my education in Aliquippa. In Western Pennsylvania, it's okay to write a sentence, where did you put the book at? That's considered proper grammar in Western Pennsylvania speak. That was the type of high school I went to. And I got the best grades in English there. But this whole year of and then at that point, admitting that I didn't know how to write, that writing is a skill and not something that you are born with, that you can be taught how to do it properly, that there's actually a mechanism, there's a structure, there's an architecture. First admitting that to myself, then I went full into the class. Was the most important class I took at Columbia University, because when you write clearly, you also then learn to think clearly. Good writing influences your thinking, and then your thinking influences your writing. People who write poorly then also have muddled thinking often. They play off on each other. And so my ability to write clearly, but it was because I practiced. It didn't just, people say, oh, you're such a good writer, it's because you're American. You know, it's a native language. You know, that's what Israelis don't know how to write either, because they're never taught how to express themselves in Hebrew. How do you make a coherent sentence? So that clearly made me a better scientist, because my research proposals were well structured, which meant that they got funded, not because my ideas were so much better than everyone else's, but reviewers like to be able to read something that's easy. And so I think that also affects the storytelling. Now, when I was writing even the storytelling is something I learned. After I wrote my book, I was sent out on a publicity tour throughout North America, PBS, CBS, you know, giving lectures, and I was petrified about being interviewed. And I went to a media consultant. Her name is, I'll give her a plug, Linda Lovitch, who was also a friend of mine from Young Judea.
And of mine also. Hey, Linda Lovitch.
I paid for about, I don't remember, 12, 20 hours worth of coaching. And she was awful to me. She would say to me, so Professor Chamovitz, do you really think that plants can have senses? And I would start giving an answer, and she would say, you're boring me. You're boring me. I don't give a shit. Sorry, I don't care. You're boring me. I don't care. I don't care. Because I was giving these long, drawn out scientific answers. And so this is also a skill set, knowing how to craft what you're trying to say. And as president now, what am I doing? I'm telling Ben Gurion's story. But I'm telling Ben Gurion, I'm not living in a world of alternative reality. I'm not doing fake news. But if I can't tell what we are doing at Ben Gurion University, why will anyone support us? If we as scientists can't tell the story of the importance of higher education, why would any government support us?
So I'm now going to plug my mentor, Professor Eugene Rosenberg, my uncle. By
the way, he was a semi-professional baseball player.
Oh, I edited his autobiography.
Oh, okay.
Eugene is my hero. Thank you for that. Eugene would say that you have to be able to explain what you're doing to your mother-in-law. No matter what the intricacy of the carotenoid pathway, you have to be able to explain what you're doing to your mother-in-law. And that stuck with me. That's Eugene, I don't know, exactly 40 years ago. So Danny, let's go back now to Ben Gurion University for a couple of minutes, where you are the head honcho. And we've fallen into this Zoom era, which many people say is a disaster, and people like me say it's a huge opportunity. What do you say?
There's no contradiction between them.
Okay.
From the university's point of view, on one hand, it's a disaster. A university, especially Ben Gurion University, needs students on campus. We are a social university. We are not the Open University. Our DNA is based on students interacting in the neighborhoods surrounding Ben Gurion University. You know, we're the only university in the poorest neighborhoods of the city, and not in the richest neighborhoods. Our students have an important social impact on our ecosystem. The interaction of a student with his fellow students and the physical interaction of a student with his mentor is key, in my mind, to university life. And we've lost that. That being said, it doesn't mean that we haven't learned new things about ourselves, which are clearly important. And I'll give you the example with Zoom, online learning. You know, before Corona, there was a debate whether we should be, online, not online. And we've just done, on March, I think the date was 11th, Ben Gurion University had 5 online courses. And on March 15th, we had over 2,000. So now we did a study, we're a university, we did a study. And what did the students feel about last semester? And a third hated it. But 1/3 thought it was better. They loved it. Now, what does that tell us about our students? And 1/3 couldn't go either way. It means that our students are diverse and that they have diverse modalities that are ready for them for teaching, for learning. And if we have only one way of learning, then we are missing some of our students. So for example, when I was an undergrad, I was one of those students who in organic chemistry sat in the back row with the newspaper in my hand because I just couldn't, it was so slow. And you'd have the pre-meds in the front row writing down every word. And, you know, I don't have the patience for lectures. And there's no doubt, like one of my sons who's a student studying computer science, says many of his lectures he doesn't go to because he listens to the taping at 150%. If he learns better that way, why should we force him to sit in the classroom? The whole question is about accessibility. How are we going to make higher education and success? How do we make higher education accessible and enable success of our students? And the way is going to be by enabling different modalities of learning. For those that need to be with a lecturer, we have to give them that opportunity. For those that really suffer in the classroom, we have to give them that. And that's why one of the things we've done over the summer, we retrofitted 90 classrooms with robotic cameras to enable hybrid learning. That those students who want to come to campus eventually will be able to come to campus and learn. And those who don't will be able to sit at home and learn. I've seen it again with one of my son's girlfriends. She misses she's having trouble doing it with Zoom. But another one is, you know, ecstatic by it. And not one is right. The question is a question of abilities and accessibility. And that way we have a better chance of increasing the success of our students.
Okay, so before I ask you a question about Zoom and online learning, I agree with you. And this disaster is temporal, because half a year or a year from now, kids will go back to campus. And I thrive. I'm like a performer when I teach. I love the kids in my class, but I've also fallen in love with the opportunities of Zoom. I'm teaching now, of course, with 200 students, which I could never do. And it's really wonderful. And some of the students come from abroad. So I want to pitch you now a vision that I had while
they stay abroad, but they're just there with you in Zoom.
Exactly. So one thing, I want to pitch an idea that's, you know, you and I have been talking about the future of education for 5 or 6 months now. And I have this vision while you're talking of Ben Gurion University for students who want to come to Beersheba and hang out there, because it's been for 30 years at least this social haven for young people. And Ben Gurion International, which offers a BA program in many subjects, not just linguistics, where students from the Hebrew-speaking diaspora can get a bachelor's degree and come to Beersheba a week a year for a big, big party. So I'm going to try and pitch that to you, but not today.
Okay.
And imagine, you know, there's millions of Israelis living abroad, and we could offer them a whole university experience. But anyway.
I think the biggest opportunity is actually bringing in foreign students and teaching in English. Our Israeli students will benefit from studying in English. They will become better academics. And we've already done this in the past 6 months in several fields: epidemiology, public health, business administration, cyber. And we have students from all over the world who are joining. I taught a class in June on what a plant knows. That was a joint class between Peking University and Ben Gurion University. And we could never have done that before.
That's another opportunity. So before I leave you, and I'm not sure I can hear you, can you say something?
Hi, Mel.
Hi, Danny. So we haven't, so talk a little bit about the challenges of professors in this new era, where the what is becoming less important as compared to the how when you're online.
Oh, in terms of teaching, not in terms of research.
Yeah, because Ben Gurion University, actually, I'm going to give a plug for you. You've been in the news. You're part of the COVID research, and you have plenty of people who are helping to move the world forward and prevent the pandemic. But on the other hand, universities get money from the government to teach students, and we haven't been doing our best. We come from Tel Aviv University, which really doesn't care a hoot about teaching undergraduate students. It's a
Look, as someone who was a former dean at Tel Aviv University, while I might be happy to hear that now that I'm president, I would take great pain. I wouldn't say that.
I'm provoking you, and I'm going to say that as somebody who teaches at Tel Aviv University.
Anyway, I think all the universities in Israel do care immensely about how they are teaching undergrads.
Okay.
I do think that.
So we need to improve.
That's definitely true. But the thing is, we also need to change the expectations of the undergrads and change the expectations of the professors. You know, there is a question in development towards the future. What is the role of the colleges in Israel versus what is the role of the universities in Israel?
Oy vey. I've just spent 10 years at 5 colleges. Let's not go there.
But I'm a firm believer that while the best researchers are not necessarily the most engaging lecturers, a university is not an extension of high school. And what I mean by that, and I've seen this time and time and time again, the top 50% of students would rather be taught by a less engaging professor who then also talks about his own research within what he's doing.
And that's what engagement is. That's what engagement is.
And I've seen it again, that there was a particular professional teacher at Ben Gurion University that one of the people told me, he says, look, he or she is fabulous, but it's basically like a high school teacher, you know, whereas another person, a friend of mine who just got a very prestigious prize, he's not considered the most charismatic, but when he starts talking about nano, doesn't matter what, within his lectures, then the students' eyes go open because they can't believe that they're hearing about something that was discovered yesterday. And that's the challenge of universities, to show that what we're teaching is relevant to what we discovered yesterday.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the advantages of online teaching is that you can say to the students, you know, here, this is the stuff that you have to read and look at. Now, I want to tell you my life as a researcher. What's going on in my lab? What's going on in the world? What are the exciting things? And I want to inspire you guys as you have done in your career. But I want to move on now to music.
Sure.
Okay. What do you have?
Should I go get my guitar?
If you want to. Do you want to?
No. You can find me on YouTube instead.
You know, we'll put some links underneath the Facebook. The Beatles, Danny, the Beatles.
What about the Beatles?
Yeah, what about the Beatles?
What about, I mean, the first song I remember was "I Want to Hold Your Hand." I was 3.
Okay. You like the Beatles?
I like the Beatles, but I'm not a Beatle maniac. I mean, they were a great band. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, a lot has happened in music that's not the Beatles also. I mean, you know, I don't sit and listen to, I'm sorry. You know, Reverend Gary Davis. Do you like Reverend Gary Davis?
I'm Jewish.
There. You know, do you like Jorma Kaukonen? He's half Jewish. You know.
I never heard of these people.
Oh my God, Mel. See, that's because you're stuck You're one of these people who's stuck on the Beatles and doesn't expand the repertoire. You know.
Always willing to learn new stuff.
Yeah. So, you know, there's just, I mean, there's no doubt that the Beatles were genius. Well, that's a good question also. Have you read, well, I just drew a blank on the book.
Danny, let me tell you why I'm asking you this question.
Yeah, go for
I'm
it.
giving a talk at Tel Aviv University next month on science and the Beatles.
Yeah, you're plugging yourself.
No, I need some good ideas.
Yeah, science and the Beatles. Science and the Beatles. Well,
I have the president of Ben Gurion University and my friend.
Yeah.
So you don't think that science is connected to the Beatles in so many ways?
I'm sure science is connected to everything. And you can ask where their genius came from. You know, what in music is inborn and what is a result of practice, and more practice. You know, if you look, do you know the Ramones?
One second, let me make some notes here.
Yeah.
The Ramones, yes.
Yeah. So, you know, the Ramones didn't know how to play anything before they got together, and that's why all their songs are 3 chords. You know, but they still influenced the generation.
Listen, at the beginning, the Beatles only knew 2 chords. But they went on, they were eager to learn.
And they practiced and practiced. You know, when their time in Berlin, what did they do? 6 sets a day for 2 years? You could perfect a lot of music by doing it that much. If it goes back to our storytelling, you know, people tell, oh, you're just a natural lecturer. If I taught Introduction to Plant Biology 4 hours a day, twice a week for 20 years. You know, if I'm not getting better, then I must be, you know, it's all about practice. You know, there is, you know, my daughter at age 3, you could play a chord on the piano, you could play notes on the piano, and she would tell you each one of the notes what it is.
Wow.
That is an innate ability.
Yeah. Perfect pitch.
You know, my sons would use her as a toy. She would be like a little toy for them. They'd invite their because they were into music, and they would invite their friends over, and she would say, "Oh, that's a G, A sharp, C sharp, and E flat." You know, and she could still do that at age, you know. So those are the, you know, the innate ability of music, and we don't understand how that happens. We really don't.
So, and still, do you have a favorite Beatles song?
You should have prepared me for this one.
No, because this is the spontaneous. This is the outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, but I'm post-COVID. But you can't ask for someone to be spontaneous intellectually post-COVID.
Okay.
No, I don't have a favorite Beatles song. I really love the Beatles. Don't get me wrong. You know, I mean, you know, like my Facebook is going to be what, you know, I do love the Beatles. You know, and it really was the first music that I you know, I have a memory of my sisters sitting in front of the television watching Ed Sullivan screaming, and I couldn't figure out why. It was traumatic as a little kid.
Absolutely. And before, before people scream at you, let's see. I think that there's some questions here.
You're kidding. People are actually watching?
Oh yeah, hundreds of people watch this, and when you post it, the thousands will. And let's see if there's questions. Yes, I wish you would get the saxophone out and play for us. They mean you. And Linda Krar. Oh, get out the guitar. Linda Krar. I know her. If you don't.
No.
So listen. So you went to get the guitar. Any university that is going to elect you as the president has to be something amazing.
So this is for today.
Okay.
It's called Let It Rain, Let It Pour, Let It Rain down a whole lot more, because I've got those deep river blues. Let it rain, oh, come on down. Let the rain, let it come around, because I've got those deep river blues. And they can keep going on, you know.
Incredible. What guitar skills you have.
There you go. You know, the little known facets of a university president.
No, but I'm saying the university must be mashu mashu to have elected somebody like you. So
They were really desperate at the time. You know, if they had to call anyway.
I don't take that. I don't buy that. So Danny, is there anything I haven't asked you? Are there any?
I think you even got me to get my guitar out. Are you kidding?
Are there any instruments you want to play?
I think we're done for the.
So
Got a
listen,
banjo over there also. Yeah.
It was great interviewing you. Thank you for being on You've Got Mel. Please send your other leading Ben Gurion people. I want to interview them. And I do hope we find a way to work together in the near future. And stay healthy.
Thanks a lot, Mel. You too. Everyone. You know, masks work.
They sure do.
Yeah.
And let's hope for a quick and positive resolution so that we can go back to a wonderful new normal, whatever that will be.
There, I'll put on my mask for everyone right now. There you go. Yep, masks work. Don't forget that.
Professor Dan
Thanks.
Chamovitz,
Thanks,
the
Mel.
president of Ben
Bye,
Gurion
Professor
University.
Rosenberg.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
sir.